This video covers required practical 1, which asks you to produce crystals of copper sulfate by reacting copper oxide with sulfuric acid. We will cover all the steps in the method for this practical, a summary of the method which you would use if you were answering a 6-mark exam question, and look through some additional questions you might be asked about the practical. You'd want to start by setting up the tripod, gauze, Bunsen burner and heat-proof mat. You would also want to set up the filter paper in a funnel over a conical flask. The first step of the method is to measure out 40 centimetres cubed of sulfuric acid using a measuring cylinder and pour it into a 100 centimetre cubed beaker. You would then place the beaker on the gauze and heat the acid over a Bunsen burner until it is almost boiling. At that point, you would turn off the Bunsen burner. Use a spatula to add small amounts of the copper oxide powder to the hot acid. Stir with a glass rod. Keep adding the copper oxide until some of it remains after stirring and the reaction, fizzing or bubbles has stopped. This is called adding the copper oxide until it is in excess. Pour the contents of the beaker into the filter paper and funnel. Pour the filtrate from the conical flask into the evaporating basin. Place a 250 centimetre cubed beaker, half filled with water on top of the gauze, and place the evaporating basin on top of the beaker. This is what we call a hot water bath. Turn on the Bunsen burner. When crystals start to form, stop heating the water bath. Pour the remaining solution into a Petri dish and leave overnight for the crystals to form. Remove the crystals using a spatula and gently dry the crystals between 2 pieces of filter paper. We'll now look at how you could write a method for this practical if you were asked to in an exam question. The first step is to measure the sulfuric acid using a measuring cylinder and pour into a beaker. You would then heat the acid using a Bunsen burner. Then you would add copper oxide using a spatula. Next, you would add the copper oxide until it is in excess and no further reaction is taking place. You would then filter the solution using a filter paper and funnel to remove any excess unreacted copper oxide. Step 6 is to pour the solution into an evaporating dish and heat over a water bath. You would then leave the crystals to dry. And finally, remove the crystals and dry further between 2 pieces of filter paper. We'll now look at some additional questions you might be asked. The first of these is, what was the colour of the sulfuric acid before the copper oxide was added? The sulfuric acid was colourless. Number 2, what was the colour of the copper sulfate solution? Copper sulfate solution is blue. Question 3, why was an excess of copper oxide added? To ensure all of the sulfuric acid reacted with the copper oxide. Remember, an excess means adding more than you need. Question 4, why was the copper sulfate solution filtered? And this was to remove any unreacted copper oxide. Number 5, why was the evaporating dish not heated directly with the Bunsen burner? When we used a water bath to heat it, as using a Bunsen burner could cause the evaporating dish to crack. Number 6, write a word equation for the reaction which has taken place, and that is copper oxide plus sulfuric acid makes copper sulfate plus water.